Electoral Commission maame penny so say omomodian na omra na asem no omeka ho bibi e wo kote wo mu se omabu asem na wie de
COVID-19 Trust Fund mpanyimfo abomodian e the PPs ni eniema bi akoye adoye amanyemeko makomako enum
Oda wani etre parliament so awra ni tiwo e de ato parliament anim se ebra na mpa akoto aba eyi mehye bedwa mpani a obeda no anase obani deni speaker of parliament no asojafo ebepiem wo ho no enyo no ene ka se sanipa no emra
Asante hini otumfo se tutu otosomieno ade afutuo ama abibi man se won kamom na woni wo wudwa eno bema watumi akonkan
Weru ni nsem bi ene yede brema nyimre kase ebo ewo UTV so medi ade Anim Addo mini aba
Obahima Afia Akyere Asiedu afa yentie ensem ayede eba no emu ensem Amampanyin dada John Dramani Mahama na lawyerfo ede motion fofo kra apie edwa na motion na omde apie edwa na omde koda Supreme Court say wo ma no mka so mu case no omatum ana oma close nsia fedie yensa mom kwan bi we na wo mu emie na de enti akoba ne se nyina ene say wo mka se case no oma close na nko mo hwe kwan se na nado danko akufo ado ene na lawyerfo ene electoral commission ni oma lawyerfo ede o madansefo ba begina dakem na wo mu NDC lawyerfo atoto wo ma no se nka wo ehwe kwan enso ekọ wi ase no na chese EC ene omampanyin na nado danko akufo ado ese omo mfa dansefo bia emma asem no ho bio enti court no enkoso na omu asem no eno na NDC fo ene oma lawyer fo a owura tachuchi kata edi makotene ne se wo mo ebonyu asem no so enti nukra ma enne Supreme Court tena so no ono nso ebebuai se enya de a wo hwe emrem a obetumi ede enhye ato electoral commission chairperson ma me no so se o magina adakem na chenchen anche oni adanse e wa brekwa wo mo electoral commission se wo mo mpese o mbedi adanse e wa asemi emo eno na enam so nti a NDC ene o ma lawyer for ede application na say motion fofo e kodan Supreme Court ne say yemo makwanye na wo mo case o mo so wo matum no wo mo nsan emie enti si ye kasa die motion no e yade o ma file e o Supreme Court a wo hwe kwan say court no ebe ma on kwan na on case no wasan ebie
Yara so a court nsemo Supreme Court na no and lawyer ni penny ogina ho edema petition me kire man penny dada John Dramani Mahama no owura chajuchi kata e ka se wo mu se omo ka kire court ni se omo nsem no omo abom nkura wie de nanso ene ensema court ni ba kire se na omo dane enoma ani se de be ya yisi maame me kire maame je mensa no obetumi aba be gina court na nim na watumi aba be yi ensem bi ano enti ne nam so a emo ka asasem ne se so man nan nani na man fa bi fofora meto court na nim a maame no entumi emba
My Lord, yes. Respectfully, before you write, I think I ought to notify your Lordship that we will now seek your Lordship's permission to reopen our case in order to have dinner on the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. Now, my Lords, we know that we can issue a subpoena without leave, but since we have closed our case on the assumption that she would be, so we intend to file a formal motion.
Council, it's a court of record, so like you correctly pointed out, you come by your form, you'll be heard.
Very well.
Yes, but you come back and give directions for the further trial.
NDC a lawyer for mu ba kwa woni Marietta Biu appear upon and our friends and trofo nhemudie and workers and okosam ene se gina isi a Supreme Court mpanyifo esiye se wontumi enhye ma megin mensa emo megina dakam na oni adanse no wo mobo enyi so ne sa enti de omo ben se omo de subpoena application ebe ma Supreme Court no na court no emfa enhye ento ma megin mensa so na ekwan bia so no omra emegina adakam.
The courts have ruled in favor of the respondents, saying that they do not agree with us, that even though this is the EC, a constitutional body, the same principles that are applicable to ordinary people should be applicable to the Electoral Commission, and therefore they were upholding their request not to mount the witness box. Subsequently, also heard Mr. Chikata. He said, well, if that is the decision of the court, then he's going to apply. In fact, he's in the process of filing an application for us to reopen our case and to subpoena the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. And so that is the status now. We have an EC who, when a request for information was served on them in the past, they refused to respond. We have an EC who was requested to answer interrogatories. They refused to respond. We have an EC that was served with an application or a notice to admit facts. They refused. We have an EC that was asked to produce documents relating to the election. They also refused that. That's the kind of EC we are dealing with. I mean, where are the principles of accountability? When is this EC going to be accountable? Counsel for Petitioner also announced that he will also file an application for review of the decision of the court. So that's 2 applications he'll be filing. The ruling is the decision of the Supreme Court of Ghana. We have nothing to do but to accept it. We disagree with the decision, and so we are going to file an application for review.
Nano eno mampeni akufo do ejina mu no e wa abato ho nsem nso no bra court no eba edimu eba wie ya ye petition ameche mampeni John Dramani Mahama lawyer for kasa wie no owura kwaje oponkroma ono nso kan lawyer for ejina ma nana akufo no nso de nsem ba se omo hwe de ekoso nko twetwe ekoso no mo hwe se ba se omo nso ebekwa akosere court no se mampeni dada John Dramani Mahama so ono nso bejina court lanim so ombe supina no nso mra no mekasa bia omo hwe de ekoso se ba se omo nyesa omo beye.
The second point that the Supreme Court has made, which I think is very important for us, is that a case is won on the strength of the plaintiff's case and not necessarily on the weakness of the defendant's case. A case is won on the strength of the plaintiff's case and not necessarily, even if so, on the weakness of the defendant's case. So this suggestion that the defendant, or in this case the respondents, must mount the witness box to enable the petitioner complete or strengthen or make a case is contrary to what the law and the practice has been for all of these decades. So today the question that the court invited us so that it will answer whether or not a party can be compelled to adduce evidence, the court has answered it and has given the many instances in which it has arrived at this similar position. Now you remember that our colleagues on the other side opposed our statement to the court that we were closing our case. And please let me just take you back. They made their case and closed their case. When it was time for first respondent said that first respondent was also closing its case and did not intend to invite anybody to adduce evidence. And that closure took place. Second respondent did same. So all 3 sides have closed their case. That was when they objected that we cannot close our case and they cannot close their case until they bring in the EC chair to be cross-examined. And so, depending on what the court decides to do, our senior lawyers will take, their next line of action. Indeed, I have had conversations. I don't know if I have their permission to say this. I've had conversations by some that if they elect to subpoena the EC chair, maybe we should also elect to subpoena the petitioner to be brought into the box. I don't know if they will agree to it at the end of the day, but it is part of the various, conversations. We'll see how it goes.
COVID-19 National Trust Fund mpanyifo abomoden a the PPs ni akade bebre akoma enumeko mako enum se de be ya COVID yo mbetumi ahye de atwitwa age omo ho.
Omai foto a obodi ato wonum de hwe COVID-19 ne wonsen kan ye mehwe COVID-19 National Trust Fund no emu na eye abedwaku eda no wo yi sika yi de free ya wo de atoto akande we nyina no de ma institutions ahodo enum isi wo monye no mo fa mbo COVID-19 ne ko ni nyina Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Ga East Municipal Hospital, Jubilee House Medical Center, Ghana Ambulance Service, National Commission on Culture, won mu nyina ensa eka eye achede bi anase COVID-19 eneme ebi. COVID-19 National Trust Fund fund no abedwako eda no mehye board of trustees no wonum titina ni ene retired chief justice Mami Sofa Ekufu womo eye amane kakra ewo eye abrankasiem Jubilee House womo dan ye nyina ede ema empanifo mo da institution no ano.
You can see so many different items. They are listed here as thermometer guns, virus sampling kits, coverall gowns, KN95 nose masks, disposable bed sheets, Veronica buckets, pulse oximeter, liters of hydrogen peroxide. Suddenly, hydrogen peroxide has become very popular in this country. We have carbolic soap, washing powder, hand and surface sanitizers, and hand gloves. Now, since its establishment in April 2020, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund has distributed various items to over 210 medical facilities, isolation centers, testing centers, health centers, chip compounds across the length and breadth of the country. These earlier relief items and various cash disbursements amounted to about 49,265,048 plus some pesos as at the end of last year. Now, the total amount we've received over the same period is 57,150,514 and some pesos in the form of donations. And taking into account recent disbursements, the fund has now just around 6 million or so left in terms of cash in our coffers. We have been extremely careful and in some ways parsimonious in the disbursement of the funds because we look at what we have and try to make it go as far as possible. Now, the core objective of the COVID-19 National Trust Fund is first to complement the efforts of the government by providing an avenue for well-meaning individuals, groups, and corporate bodies to contribute or donate monies and resources that may be required to combat the pandemic.
Yadani mashebe dwamsua enenso appointment committee etnase etoto aswafo a omampani apa omo ano na Bimbila MP Owura Dominic Nitiwu ono na mai bambo no omampani abodi din sese etoto na no nyoma nyina akoyi a onkohwe na face ha ministry no nkoda Ministry of Defense na no na Tamale Central mashebe dwani Owura Mutala Mohammed bisa se ebra mashebe dwane toso enso no na djuma ekwa wiye no omukọ parliament no sojafo bi bowura ho na sabre no onyanentie so no share sesa nipa namra oyi anosei.
No civilian, and let me repeat, no civilian has the capacity to be able to move and order the members of the armed forces. It's not possible. They will not do it. And they have never done it before. Mr. Chairman, so the names that were being bandied about, including my name, did not at that time have the capacity to move the armed forces. If you remember, I was a civilian, not a civilian, I was not a minister at that time. None of the people were ministers at that time. We didn't have the capacity. Even if you were a minister, you will still give whatever you want to say to the commanders. And if the orders are lawful orders, they will obey them. And I want to say that that is not what happened at all. None of us had the capacity. The names that's why I'm happy to use the word allegation. The names that you allege didn't have the capacity at that time to move the armed forces or members of the armed forces of the Republic of Ghana or the police service. And you remember that it was both the police service and the armed forces. Some people failed to maybe appreciate that it was a combination of both the police and the armed forces. We didn't have that capacity at all. And I just wanted to answer to you.
Yako appointment committee omo mrashebedwam enchen sabe ye kase ya omo gusu ade omampanyi aboni din se wonhwe na eniema ekoyi a wonhwe enwumesu ahonsam so no woti bedwa no anim omo totu na no yenhwe de ekoso kaka.
Honorable Chair, my honorable colleague asked me if I'll look into it, and I will look into it. Thank you. Thank you.
The last question.
Oh, okay. I thought you had done.
Very well. Honorable Minister Designate, there's been this long outstanding challenge of teachers refusing postings to rural schools and constantly seeking reposting to urban schools. What will you do to curb or put an end to this challenge? Thank you.
Honorable Chair, issues about posting of teachers to schools across the country has always been a challenging one. And this time around, what Ghana Education Service under at the direction of the minister did was to post the students or the teachers directly to the schools where the vacancies are. And to a large extent, it is working compared to previous times when they were posted to the regions, and then the regions may refuse to post people to certain schools with vacancies. So yes, it's not perfect, but the idea that when they get the appointment letter, the name of the school is on it, is helping to a large extent in solving this rural vacancies challenge that has confronted us for a long time. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, that brings me to an issue which is bothering me now. Several young people posted to schools under your new recruitment in communities where they cannot speak any of the local languages or dialects in the communities. There are no facilities for even rentals. And indeed, one of them said when she went into the community, she couldn't get a single person to communicate in English with. So we was trying to communicate with sign language. I understand that under your new system, the basic schools, they're supposed to start teaching them in their local language. If that is so, how useful will such a teacher be to the school?
Honorable Chairman, issues of language and teacher placement and deployment is something that we have to take a serious look at. Our Ghana Education Service is doing what we call language mapping, making sure that we have enough teachers who can teach a specific language, and then liaising with our WINIBA in their language school to make sure, Jumaku, to make sure adequate teachers are trained. So yes, it's a challenge. And another challenge is...
Yato ansam no so na yakọ esemfufuru ane de ani eche asatimantem ne yahwe enyinam kane ahonse na grid kofo mo na munya kane anana se ye electricity no mode ma yisi gina fe o mache ama amanfo ne no na akọ asantimantom mo chese na sen ene o manko ne wo mo toto ne o ma asisi mfidie fufuru se de be ya enyinam kane ahonsem no akọ asantimantem a ebegina
Baya enna kakra ni ewo ho ana kumasen kane ne baabi wo ho na edundum ebi nso ewo ho no ma na hoɔden no na abrase enno na enyinima hoɔden adwumayefo wɔn ma hyase de emfidie ya ne hoɔden eye transformers EBACC na no na wɔbɔ apro a wɔhwɛ sɛde ebetimi aboa ama apagya wɔ adwumayemu ewo ahoma so substation ebra wɔnom de saa transformer EB 66 MVA akwakosi wɔnom na corporate communication manager owura Ebenezer Mankwa de emma enyinam ahoɔden adwumayefo yi wɔde etu dwase emfidie wɔnom edi sisie no wɔhwɛ kɛse betimi aboa na wɔtimi asɔ saa wɔ hawa wɔnom ekomoyi ano ebretia wɔ emom
Ghana Grid Company no yejuma yeye wo power value chain no say ye na yeji power from generating companies like VRA Asogli Buidam ne ade omo de power no man ya na yen ya transfer ma bit say ECG and some mining companies no more the power na ama households them are companies, them are Afia. Into any ejuma. Na who say as a power na ye unstable kakra or Kumasi, any other surrounding areas. Into ye the transformer Afia Accra, your friend 66 MVA transformer. Abeka transformer say well Kumasi did that. Sena be able to me ama ahodiaba transmission. Nim sena be sa kakra na sa call off na call on ni nyina etubeta. na we na a short term measure agrico ye dey ato ho say ye be boa ama Kumasi power na stable long term no EU for European Union for ama yen loan bi 9.7 million euros sa loan no ye dey be boa transmission line na efi ahojo eko ahomaso eno no 18 kilometers no ene ye kwakọ ahemu apondin se na be ya ebetimi eno so ama consistency abaha.
Major project manager Dema Electricity Company of Ghana, engineer Frederick Kwabna Bediakon. What the two just said the one edi enfidie ACCA wo gidi ye se ebetimi aso hawni nyina no awo mantamyemo na ma obia anya ahoto ede ayeni nyuma.
Na problem kakra ewo ye substation na ewo ahojo no. Enti money overloaded kakra. Ye overloaded na ye to me eko off. Umtimi man share the load. But see ade hope say ye start transform away ba beka ho a na ye most of the load ni free ahojo a ye betumi ayeden atesaentawantawa na say ohawa na ewo system ni mu enti ye hope say by all means at the end of the day no bibia ebe wie na yetimi asave mu yie na ye see ye ni bibia e frɛ no perfect system say system no fault crapo emba fault betumi aba a emfa sa transform away ho. But you hope says a fault in the body, ye hu adwuma and make sure say oh you restore power ama as a customers.
Asante hini otumfo se tutu otoso mienu e de futuo ama ebibi man panyimfo se wo mo ene dom ho won ka won ho emom na fe won frase se wo didwa e wo mankasa emu ekoba ne sa ebeboa ama otumpon e wo sikasemo wo kire se ache komo ye ne sa komadi ye dadada.
Asante hini otumfo se tutu otoso mienu e de nsem we tuja e wo manhia hemfie wo Kumasi emra Secretary General edema African Continental Free Trade Area His Excellency Wemkele Mene ebepie mu e wo honoma ye beka no potoka sem katesi ko na omo endwendwene eniema betima boa ama ebibiman betima fa ne ntoma pa efra mra otumfo eto an kasa so no kire se edwadi ya ade ehia pa enti man ye wo abibrem nyina ebeti saa enhyehyeye na se ebetimi aboa na mra Ghana ne Nigeria edidwa South Africa ne Ghana edidwa Cote d'Ivoire ne Liberia edidwa no na eboa ama mpuntuo etimi akoso eno ene kwan ba ko a betima ama ebibiman etimi ediye pa.
There's no gainsaying the fact that this is one of the ambitious visions of the African Union to set up this AfTA for intra-trade amongst ourselves. And if you think that the whole of Africa we trade only about 16%, it becomes very disheartening, and all the rest of us are all looking to Europe and America, exporting that we don't have control about, even the prices that we have to, the money that we have to be paid to us, we don't have control. Cocoa, gold, oil and everything is being controlled outside, and it's dictated to us that this is what you have to be paid for. It brings us to this position where why has Africa left it so long? Even though this one has come up in 2018 in Rwanda and then having inaugurated you in August, which I followed with keen interest, I still believe that it's better late than never, because we have a population of about 1.2 billion, GDP of 3.4 trillion, yes. And yet we are poor, and yet we cannot do anything. Industry, we have to import equipment from wherever. We don't trade with Nigeria from here. Ivory Coast is just around the corner. The economies are being supported by France, so they would always go to France. We have a way to go because we have Congo, Brazzaville and others all looking up to France. So obviously the economies are geared towards France. They dictate what they have to do. And therefore getting the political will to take a decision in terms of intra-trade is going to be somehow very difficult. But we still have to persevere. Once they have rectified it, 54 countries are, apart from Eritrea, we need to make sure that we work this to achieve the objectives. That's why this African Continental Trade Area was established.
Secretary General Edema African Continental Free Trade Area Emra wono so ekasa eche Asante no tumfo setutu ena wo kire mu se Secretary te aba Accra na se Ghana ebetimi aboa ye pa ama ebibiman etimi ediye.
We are truly as Africans through the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have a very unique opportunity to integrate Africa, particularly from a business, investment and trade point of view. And of course, the whole continent stands on the shoulders of Kwame Nkrumah, on the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, the vision of a united Africa in terms of investment and trade. And so that is my job, to make sure that this vision of an integrated market, an integrated Africa, that it becomes a reality.
UTV and America Sebona Gusua, which you try home and advent craft of free, a boy for a by a bar, you better cast a bonus.